Season 3 of the Sporting Chance podcast is brought to you by MountainStateFalconrySupply.com. Check out Mountain State Falconry Supply for all of your micro and East Coast falconry needs.
This podcast is also brought to you by Midnight Falconry Supply. Visit him at midnightfalconry.com for your tightest braided equipment.
And also, NorthMountainGoshawks.com. Contact Seth Roy to reserve next season's hunting partner. Welcome, everyone, to a very special episode of the Sporting Chance podcast. Today, we are joined by author and falconer Helen Macdonald. Thank you for coming, Helen.
Hello, here I am. This is great. What a treat.
We're very excited to have you.
So Helen is the author of H is for Hawk. She is the subject of the film based on the book that fairly recently released. We got so much to talk to you about, Helen, but we kind of wanted to start with falconry. Where, your start in falconry, how much falconry you did before the movie, things like that. Oh. So what was your first experience with falconry?
My first experience with falconry, oh my God, I can't even tell you. I think, I was that child. I was the very weird nature kid. Like I think many falconers were and probably still are underneath. So I was the one that would, the entire garden was full of rocks and be like pulling them over, looking for insects and millipedes and frogs. And, I'd catch snakes and bring them home. Luckily, there weren't any venomous ones near where I lived. And I would constantly rescue baby birds that didn't need rescuing, that kind of thing. I basically should have grown up in the 19th century. That would have been much better for me, I think. I could have been a bird collector or something or whatever. But and falconry was really early on. So I think I was obsessed with hawks from like so small I can't even remember. In fact, I was so obsessed with falcons and hawks when I was really small, it became a kind of almost religious craze that I had. I remember I used to pray to Horus in school assemblies when I was a kid rather than, God, which is, probably going to damn me to hell, unless Horus is God, in which case I'm laughing. There was this whole period when I was about 6 when I used to try and sleep with my hands behind my back like wings. I mean, it was kind of nuts, basically. But then later I discovered that I could actually, keep hawks, and then everything became a lot less weirdly religious and a lot more practical. So I kind of, I just bought all these secondhand books. I know I was a really early reader. So, I was this schoolgirl from Surrey in England, this, kind of middle-class town, daughter of journalists, and I was reading these 19th century books by like Harting and Delmay Radcliffe and stuff. And I really believed that I was like these guys. It was hilarious, and like I'm a falconer like these officer class British people. And I got my dad. I nagged him and begged him to take me to the Falconry Centre, which was Philip Glazier's place in Gloucestershire back then, which was still run by Glazier. I'd read his autobiography, As the Falcon Hit Her Bells, and I was obsessed with that, right? I kind of knew it by heart. So I actually met him, and he just said something quite grumpy and dismissive to me, which is kind of fair enough. I was an annoying small girl. He was like, what do you want, But I did see my first falcons flown, and it was probably 76, 77. And I remember Paul Bevan was there flying Lanas. And as soon as I saw that falcon shape against the sky, flickering up, we had like a big stoop and I was gone. That was it. That's all I wanted to do. I told my parents I'm going to be a falconer, and they were like, do you not want to be a doctor or a lawyer? And I'm like, nope. And that was it. And I went from there, really. I mean, I don't know how about you guys? Did you have your early moments,
Yeah, I think there's always, I think the idea of falconry, it gets into you. And then as a new person or as a child, depending when you got into it, but then there's always like that moment when like you see it or experience it. Some people, it's like holding a bird. Me, it was going on my first hunt and seeing 2 Harris Hawks follow the falconer we were with. And I was, 13, 12, 13. And the Kearsall came down, thought he had food, and it landed like right next to me on a log in the woods. And then
that's it. That's like, the moment.
And right when it looked at me and then he whistled and it looked at him and followed him, I was like, oh my, I'm doing this for the rest of my life. However I have to do.
Those flash memories, right? The ones that just burn their way in, and that's it.
That was the moment for me.
So in America, a lot of the introductions to falconry was the book My Side of the Mountain.
Yeah, frightful.
Right. I'm not sure if that book was as popular overseas as it was here amongst children.
I read it. I didn't know what a hemlock tree was or most of the things in it, but I loved it. And I loved the falcon, of course. I had a photograph cover. Was there a TV series of it or something, or a film? Can't remember.
There might have been a dramatized version of it. Yeah. I read that book too, and nobody suggested it to me. I just found it in the library. But my dad was always interested in being a falconer, and in America, it's more prohibitive to be a falconer. It's not an easy thing. Yeah. So I always kind of knew about falconry, but one of my first introductions to it was the movie Beastmaster, which is a really bad 80s.
I remember that.
It was like, for those of you listening who don't know, it was after the Conan the Barbarian movie came out. There was this craze for movies similar to it. So they made a movie called Beastmaster, and the guy had a Harris Hawk in it. So it was supposed to be in a fantasy world, and that's got to be the easiest bird to deal with.
It's amazing how many alien planets and ancient civilizations have got Harris Hawks in, isn't it? It's always surprised me.
Or medieval kingdoms, they'll have Harris Hawks.
Yeah, it's funny actually. One of the things that was really quite fun about this H's for Hawk movie is, obviously there was no question, but it was going to be Gosses, right? You can't make a Goshawk movie and use anything else. So, and we'll talk maybe if you want a little bit later on about how incredible Claire Foy, the lead actor was. She's a real natural falconer. And then we discovered that the other film that came out that was kind of like a falconry film was this film Hamlet about Shakespeare's kid and the writing of Hamlet. And there's a Harris Hawk in it. And Claire and I were so cross. We were just like, what is this?
I could almost imagine a Harris Hawk dyed, gray and white for the movie.
Yeah. Just painted with barring underneath. So, Beastmaster. God, there was a whole thing.
Yeah, they ended up doing a TV series on it too. But I'm into that type of thing anyways. I'm a big fan of Conan the Barbarian and the author that wrote it, Robert E. Howard. Yeah. Those original stories were really good.
They were great. Did you ever sorry, I'm going to butt in. Did you ever see that episode of Chips where they had a Harris Hawk that was an accomplice on a bank raid? It was amazing. Yeah. There was a shot where Eric Estrada's looking up and he's like radioing in that he's like, I got a visual on a suspicious hawk. And you look up and there's a Harris with like a bag tied to its like jesses, like flying over full of money. It was just peak 1980s falconry shit. Sorry. Back to the story.
No. Love that.
That's hilarious.
So I ended up, there was quite close to me, there was a falconry center called, it was Way Hill, which is pretty well known in Britain. It was run by this amazing guy called Reg Smith and his wife Hillary. It used to be a wildlife park, but then basically all of the large mammals died of old age. So it ended up being a falconry center. And in fact, there was a giant mound by the flying ground that was where they couldn't dig a big enough hole for the elephants. So they just kind of heaped earth on top of it, which was kind of one of the places you could stand on and look over the zoo. And again, this is like a really interesting British version of what falconry is. And it's, I'm definitely of the opinion that falconry is hunting. That's what it is. But there's this kind of weird ancillary world in Britain, as you probably know, of falconry centers and flying displays for the public, which, and I used to go there every weekend. I got the train. I was like 11. They taught me how to dig holes and clean aviaries, and I helped with the birds and stuff. And it was like kind of an apprenticeship. And then I got given an imprint kestrel that was a rescue. And so I was like 13 or 12. I mean, I was too young really, but I was a really dedicated falconer with this bird. I used to fly her every day after school. She was cool. So I had a kestrel for years and years and years.
That was probably a European kestrel.
Yeah. Yeah, so bigger but lamer than American kestrels. She was cool. And then I got a buzzard, which I wasn't really very. Okay, so I'm going to complain a bit here. So there were these whole bunch of guys that were kind of like also being kind of unofficial apprentices at this place, and they all got kestrels too. And then when they came for their turn to sort of level up, they all got red tails, and I got a common buzzard, and I felt gutted by that because like they were all out there like slaying pheasants and rabbits and shit, and I was like I had this buzzard that if I put it near a rabbit, it would just sit up a tree and complain and come back and try and find me, and I just felt like so I think that was the first time I realized like deep down that there was some issues at that point with women in falconry, really, that they didn't take me seriously, and I was kind of cross about that. So, but then I've ended up over the years. My main stuff that I've done, I've specialized in merlins for years, and annoyingly, because the women's hawk and all that. But I just think they're epic little birds. I messed around with a sparrowhawk for a bit, and the worst flight with a merlin is like the best flying with a sparrowhawk, and once you've had a couple of proper ringing flights where the merlin will, ring up after a lark and they both are out of sight in the sky, I don't think there's anything. I mean, it's like heron hawking in miniature, right? It's incredible. So I flew them for years and years while also flying, occasionally working at falconry centers and flying birds there. And also worked for Nick Fox for years too, which was kind of an interesting.
That's one of Gracie's heroes.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, the Bird of Prey management series. I must have watched
the videos. Do you remember my voice? My voice is on one of them. It's so funny. I had my best BBC sexy voice on one of them.
That was great. Yeah, that series. I tried to find it on YouTube. I don't think it's even on YouTube. But I was homeschooled as a kid, so I didn't have I didn't have cable. We had like one TV in our house, one computer, and it was like all Yeah. And so when we wanted to watch something, we would put a movie on or something. So like all I would watch was I would just watch that whole Bird of Prey management series and then just start it over and then go back to the beginning.
Behavior that is. None of us are obsessive weirdos, are we? None of us.
I would just sit there and watch it, and then Gary Brewer's squirrel hawking video, anything that we could get, like I would just sit there and watch it because that's like all I cared about, and I would be sitting there watching it while I'm like practicing making anklets and jesses.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
With the books open, and there was
the Gary Brewer anklets with like studs all over them for squirrels. And,
the chaps.
Chaps.
Oh, chaps. That's right. You had a listener.
we were corrected by.
Really?
Yeah.
Like keep the change. It's like chaps. Okay.
Chaps. So if we wear chaps, that's because they're actually called chaps. Shout out to a friend of the show, Joseph Carter. He hunts rats and muskrats with mink.
Oh yeah. I've seen some of that. It looks amazing.
He texted me to correct me about that. So every opportunity I have to correct everyone else, I do.
He's definitely listening to this one. So shout out to Joseph Carter.
Thank you, Joseph, for educating me in the correct pronunciation of the word shaps. This is great. Like this is the thing about podcasts, right? You put yourself out there and people. You've got to make mistakes. People can correct you. It's part of what it's all about, right?
And they love to correct us.
But we learn a lot too, though, which is cool. Because I sometimes I'll just say stuff because I'm like, I've never heard anything different, so this is a fact to me, and I just say it, and I'm like, people will reach out and they'll correct me, and I'm like, well, thank you for I don't get offended by it because I'm just like, I haven't heard anything different, so I'm just going to say it like it's true, and if somebody corrects me, now I learned something different. That's
very cool. I'm one of those people that I hate being wrong, so.
I hate being wrong too, but I think I just
You've become with the wisdom of the podcaster.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
So leading up to Mabel, had you flown other goshawks?
No, I thought they were awful things. I'd seen gosses, so I had this weird thing where I kind of joined the British Falconers Club when I was super, super young, and I got invited out a couple of times with a bunch of really old school falconers. Like these guys were flying hawks in the 40s and 50s. They were all British kind of army officers. And I grew up in Camberley, which is the kind of the base of the British Army's officer kind of training place. So it was very, this kind of weird cadre of army falconers, basically, and they were all very wealthy. And a couple of times I went out with them hawking with gosses. They all flew goshawks, and they used to do stuff like offer me snuff when we were out, because that's what you do with weird school children who come out hawking with you on country estates. And again, it's a bit like your flash memory of that Harris, right? Those whole days out were really astonishingly, I can remember them vividly, but mostly I remember them losing hawks. Over the course of the day, there'd be fewer and fewer goshawks in the party because they'd just go and sit up a tree and not come back. And there was no telemetry at that point. So, and they were great. They had the whole attitude of like, oh, well, never mind. We'll have to pop back tomorrow and pick her up. And, let's just hope she's all right. And it was all very kind of like those Victorian, stories of mountain climbers. You go on and just, I'll just slow you down. It was that kind of attitude,
Yeah, that's
so
good.
we'd usually come back with like maybe one pheasant and like one hawk after 6 goshawks went out. I think they might have been terrible falconers, to be honest. And these were all like, this is even before Finnish birds. These were like, German gosses. And I just thought they were nuts. I saw a couple of kills and I was really impressed by them, but I didn't want a hawk that wouldn't come back, right? And I was really, at that point, really obsessed with falcons and remained obsessed with falcons. And it wasn't until my dad died very suddenly that I started dreaming of gosses. And I hadn't flown hawks for a few years. And I kept thinking of this one bird. When I worked in Gloucestershire, we had a female, very old adult female goss brought in. A member of the public had found her. She'd knocked herself out against a tree. In that way that goshawks sometimes do. And they brought in this box and put it on the table. And, Mima reached in and got this bird out. And I've never seen anything like it. It was like a bird that was like a cumulonimbus storm cloud. She was just astonishing. She smelled, that pepper and musky smell of a goss. She had these really old feet that were kind of gnarled, and her eyes were like, European gosses don't get that really deep red of the Atricopilus American gosses, but they were really, really like hot coals. And there's nothing wrong with her. She just, knocked herself out. So we took her out and let her go, and she just disappeared into nothing. It was like she'd found this kind of a rent in the air and kind of slipped through it. And after my dad died, I just kept remembering this goshawk over and over again. And I woke up one morning and thought, right, that's it. I'm getting a goss. And I think it was because I knew I couldn't tame grief. My dad and I were really good mates, but I knew I could tame a hawk, and it would be like the biggest distraction in the world. And gosses just seemed to chime with whatever I was going through, like this sort of madness. So I got this amazing bird, Mabel, who was this bizarre Finnish Czech German bird that was basically had the body size of a German female, but the tail length of a Finnish goss, which was a nightmare. So she constantly broke her tail or tried to break her tail. And I basically just, I trained and flew this goss in this really like over the toply kind of feral manner. I didn't really see anyone. I just turned totally feral and goss myself, to be honest. And, basically I had no money then. So I was living off everything she caught, and I had some bad rabbits, guys, stealing really elderly rabbits isn't fun. And that was the year that I just basically fell off the world with a goss, which was intense.
Yeah, I think something about it, it's funny that you and all of your descriptors in in the movie, in your book, the way you describe that bird, because I remember you mentioning that in the book and in the movie, just like a storm cloud and like a rent in the air. That it's like such a perfect description like of a goshawk. Like
I love
especially
so much.
Especially like a mature one that has experience, and even falconry birds like you, and it's just they just like pierce you, and then you becoming, like you said, feral with that bird. And I feel like there's something about guys, and this is like I'm biased because I'm just and Aaron too, we're goshawk guys, and it's like when you start flying them, it kind of like it. If you didn't have like a real life and like a job, and like you could easily, they just like suck you in.
That's what happened. Yeah.
And like you're at work and it's like all you're thinking of is like, I got to get back to my bird because she needs to be flown today and she wants to go and I want to go. And
You totally become like the second thing in that relationship. The bird is the one, and you don't really feel like you're alive unless you're out with the bird but with the goss. And, I remember years ago talking to an Arab falconer about, because I did some stuff with, when I worked for Nick Fox, we'd take the bird, captive bred birds out to the Gulf. And there was an Arab falconer who was saying, an Emirati falconer who said, the thing about between peregrines and sakers is that a peregrine just looks straight through you, but a saker looks at you, which is a beautiful way of describing how those birds are different. And it's really true. And I think the thing about goshawks is they look both through you and at you at the same time, which is really weird, right? They look like they're really remote and there's nothing there. They're made of ice and rock and fire. But also they know you and you get that bond, with a goss that I don't think I've ever had with a falcon. It's like it's sort of twinned with your bones. It's amazing. So yeah, big goss fan now.
Yeah.
Do you know, I'm sure you do know, how Mabel was raised? Was she did someone imprint her? Was she raised by her parents?
No, she was parent reared, but we just, got to this point because I did the Edmund Burt thing of keeping her in the house, down low, and being with her all the time. So she developed quite a lot of imprint-like behaviors. Mm-hmm. Not calling, thank goodness, but she was super, super playful and she wanted to be with me, which was really great. Obviously until I put her weight up and then she'd fuck off. But I think that closeness really, really helped develop a kind of quite a strong bond. But I don't know. One of the things I learned training lots of birds at falconry centers is, and I'm sure you guys are just, even more aware than I am of that, but birds really are just individual creatures. And sometimes birds in the same clutch can behave so differently. It's super weird. Are you imprint guys or are you parent reared?
I'm not entirely sure what I am, but I have.
I meant bird wise. Sorry, that was
I do mean that. I would say Casey is pretty firmly an imprint guy.
Yeah,
I've done a little of both. Casey has much more experience than me with goshawks, but my most successful bird was a parent reared bird, and she was from parents imported from Finland. Mm-hmm. So she was a real deal Finnish goshawk for whatever that means, and she was parent reared, and she was just kind of the dream bird. I don't know if I'll ever have another one, and she met an untimely end through. She struck my best guess is that she hit a tree. We were in the middle of the woods and I found her convulsing on the ground, and I believe she was chasing a squirrel and hit a tree, but I didn't see it happen. And I tried to keep her alive for several days. I took her to the vet and got emergency care, and she ultimately passed away.
That's rough.
Yeah, like all goshawks do.
Yeah, they all do that in the end. But it's funny, I remember this is a really weirdly personal analogy, but when my dad died, again, it was really sudden. He had a heart attack and just collapsed in the street. And I remember my mom and my brother and I were saying afterwards, if you had to choose a way to go, it would be that. It's a battlefield death. And I think, it's like that with gosses, that they have battlefield deaths or aspergillosis, one or the other.
Yeah, one or the other, exactly.
Yeah, it's rough. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Which is how I understand yours, that Mabel passed away.
Yeah, Mabel. So I had this nightmare situation where I really wanted to keep flying her. I flew her for a few more seasons, and then I ran out of money. I was, being what I once explained to someone was a freelance academic, by which I meant I was completely unemployed. And I had to move back to my mom's house for a bit. And my mom lives in the middle of some of the most expensive sporting estates in southern Britain. So I just couldn't find anywhere to fly her. So I loaned her to friends up north, and they had a great time flying her, and she caught a bunch of bunnies. And then, just suddenly, I always assume it's someone, turning their compost heap over down the road or something, but she just died really quickly of aspergillosis. So I've still got her ring, and I've got a bunch of her molted feathers that I keep because I'm a sentimental old fool. She was definitely the bird of a lifetime, that one.
I definitely get it.
Yeah.
And there's always one bird. There's always a bird that you just won't forget. And you may have others, like Aaron says, like he'll have another one it's just as good. It's not better. It'll be different, but you'll always have that one bird. You'll always have like a special.
I always feel it's like talking about relationships, though, isn't it? It's like, oh yeah, that was the one. There'll be more, but that was, oh God, that sounds really, really terrible, actually, doesn't it? You know what I mean? Like,
we know what you mean.
Moving on.
Yeah, we know what you mean.
Did you fly anything after her?
No, I've just been going out. I've gone out with loads of, so like the end of the season, this last season, I went out partridge hawking with Tony James and a friend, watched him. I don't know if you've had Tony James on this. He's an amazing raconteur. He's a great falconer. He'd be a really interesting person to have on. He's flying a red-naped Shaheen at the moment. And he's one of those people that I used to worship him years ago because he used to fly with no telemetry back then. And he never weighed a bird in his life. And yet somehow he'd have these falcons that just behaved and flew like in extraordinary ways. And we have this joke going that I have never seen any of his falcons actually catch anything because I am like a Jonah to his falcons. So I hadn't been out with him for, a couple of years. And he was like, do you want to come out on the last day of the season? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I've got this really efficient game hawk. Most extraordinary sleep I've seen for a decade. We're talking, 1,000 foot straight down constantly, and missed, the bird. And he was like, oh, never invited you out, Helen, you bastard, But no, I mean, I think what happened was when the book came out, my life became very different. I was very, quite a sort of stick in one place person. And then I just had to keep traveling, like the book and the tour and stuff. And then, going to America a lot. And I realized that I didn't feel in the right place to keep hawks. I've got parrots now, which are much easier. I've got a parrot breeder friend who takes them whenever I go anywhere. But I think hopefully in the next couple of years, I'd like to fly another Merlin, I think,
What would encourage you to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you earlier, but I didn't want to go down a rabbit hole because I'm kind of known to get a little schizophrenic on the show and just kind of jump around. But
jump around. I've got raging ADHD. I mean,
that's why we both, me and you, need Aaron here to keep, because otherwise we'll just be like,
yeah.
What type of Merlin were you, like what subspecies were you flying? Or,
Columbarius, just the British one. So I think it's a bit bigger than the American ones. It's kind of weird that this is the case. It's usually the other way around. So I've seen black Merlins in the States and they're just gorgeous, the suckly eye ones. And I'd love to fly one of those. But I think back when I was flying, the only birds that were breeding in captivity in Britain, they were all European, British subspecies. And I really like them. I prefer females because they've just there's a little bit more leeway and a little bit more power, and they tend to have more luck early on with larks. And it's like a goss. I mean, everything is like how well they do early on as to how discouraged they get. So if you get a bird and if you get a female Merlin and get it killing quickly, then you'll get those incredible flights where they're like, no, I know I can get this lark,
Right.
The jacks are they tend to give up a little bit more quickly. But I've had a couple of jacks that were really, really amazing flyers. And quite often, the thing about Merlins too is that you get to this place a bit like a goss where you get that bond, and, I ended up not even using a lure. They'd come back and find me, at the end of flight. So that was nice. And sometimes I'd even bring the lark back to the fist, which is like, it's a real...
that's like falconry, like people think it works.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, this doesn't happen. It's like, yeah, but they always do that. No. I love falconry misconceptions. People come up with so much weird stuff, don't they? They just, I don't know. Have you had any? What's your greatest falconry misconception? The bringing it back is the one that everyone thinks.
Yeah, bringing it back, eating people's dogs, flying dogs away. Yeah. Picking up your dog and flying away with it. That's probably the biggest one you hear, And then now with AI and people with low IQs, it's basically just a fact now that an eagle is just going to grab your dog and fly away.
Flying away with kids, Yeah,
people send me stuff all the time. I'm like, this is literally AI. Like, it's not. Yeah, it's like ridiculous.
It is. People's inability to understand what AI looks like is kind of, it's becoming, I guess it's becoming more understandable, but like, it's just like, guys, come on, that isn't possible. Like the underwater parrot, come on, no. Stop sending me that.
That one was hilarious. The parrot in the little submersible.
Yeah. Little Jacques Cousteau parrot.
And then the parrot dance parties. My wife is like,
I haven't seen those.
She's like, is this real? And I'm like, no. I'm like, no, it's not real.
It's not real.
But
I don't even say it. I just look at her and I just walk away.
It looks so real, though.
It does look real.
It does look real. And they do dance, like they will do that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but it's not like, like 4 cockatoos and 3 macaws and like all these other birds on a table.
Doing the dance from Chicago.
Yeah, no, it's not real.
No, that's true. But
I think my misconception is probably when people just assume that it's your job.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It would be nice if there was some sort of program that paid me just to go hunt by myself with my hawks, but that doesn't exist.
No, that doesn't exist. It's annoying unless you want to be a professional falconer. But the problem with that is that most falconers don't like being told what to do by anyone. So that's also out for me.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
But the book has been interesting in terms of falconry. So, I've been a kind of ambassador for falconry in a way. I mean, I got a, it's partly one of the reasons I wanted to write the book, I think, was that, and it's tricky. I grew up in this weird time when there were a lot of books by women falconers. It was, I think, there was like Emma Ford and there was kind of like a whole bunch of like Mimer, and they all wrote books. And I was like, I don't want to write a book. Do I want to write a book? And then this thing happened and I thought, this is a story about like, there's way more than falconry. I'm going to write it, but I'm going to try and do falconry, a decent service in this book. And hopefully, I was worried that people would want to take up falconry after reading it, but it turns out I made falconry look so difficult and miserable that people haven't been doing that. So that's good.
That's interesting you point that out, because we actually wanted to ask you that. We've had people on before, British falconers who had, I don't know if they said they thought it might happen, that there might be a surge of people wanting to own goshawks after the movie.
After the movie, I don't know. I hope not.
They would very quickly learn that was not a good idea, because they are not fun animals to
They are not.
keep and not fly.
No, I hope not. Well, maybe hopefully they'll read the book and then I can get some more money and then they'll realize it's a really bad idea. But I mean, there's so much bad falconry out there. One of the worst things that happened on tour with the book was going to some kind of like, I can't even remember what rescue place it was. It was somewhere in California. And so what happens when you're on tour is you've got your event that you do the talk in the evening. And sometimes it's really great. Like I remember Simone turned up once with Henry, her Merlin, and I couldn't concentrate because Simone Lobson's in the front row with this bird preening on her knee, and I'm just looking at this bird and ignoring the audience. It's like, yeah, whatever, let's go and play with this Merlin. But they'll say like, oh, we're going to do this, and then we're going to have a dinner, and then we're going to blah blah blah. So they took me to this rescue place, and it was like the worst thing I've ever done in my life. It was full of like birds kept in aviaries, tiny aviaries. And no one had any falconry knowledge at all. So, they brought out this beautiful Anatum peregrine, Western Anatum, and it had a broken wing. And I was like, well, you could like maybe put it in a breeding program. They're like, oh, no, it's an educational bird. And I looked at it and I'm like, well, and they're like, it can't really fly, but we throw it up in the air on a line and it kind of comes down. And I'm like, what? And then while I was talking to them, they were feeding it like mealworms.
What?
And I know. And all the other birds there were like, they had like, one leg, one eye, and they all look really miserable and really, unhappy. And I'm just like, this is why falconry needs to be, I don't know, man. Just like that inability to understand what a bird needs and what a bird wants and why the evolved technology of falconry is, it's evolved to be the right way to look after these things. And that really got to me, actually. I think I complained about it afterwards to some people, but that was the worst thing that happened on tour. That was right.
We find sometimes that group is a little adversarial to falconers.
Yeah, they hate us, don't they? They think we're all, evil.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost as if they want to
jealous.
Be like, that's like the obvious, that's like on the nose, but like to look at it more deep is like they would rather not use the techniques that have been cultivated for thousands of years and then just do it a completely different way, almost out of spite, to not come under the ancient tradition. You know what I mean?
Like people that want to lose weight and want to do everything but diet and exercise.
Exactly. Yeah. I did an event. I did an event with RFK and Tom Cullen and
oh man.
Yeah, and Dr. Oz was there and all this and that. And then we're all the falconers are there. And there's a lot, there's a bunch of falconers there. Teddy Moritz was there, another pioneer of, women's falconry. And, and we're all getting set up. And then like this van pulls up. And
like, oh no. Oh God. I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
And all these like, broken birds come out. Like,
yeah. And like these like volunteer, like rehab people get out and they're all nice, and then the point was to like mingle throughout the party, the event with birds.
Right.
And like, talk to people about falconry and birds of prey, which was great. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. But then like you could see the falconers, they're all tied off. Everything's all nice and tight. Everything's all neat and trim. And then you got like these volunteers in hoodies and sweatpants walking around. And like at one point, the owl baited off the kid's glove and like landed on the other kid's back. And the owl's like going up his back and he's like pulling it with the
oh my God. I know, like this like injures my soul hearing stuff like this.
We're just like looking at each other, like all the falconers are like, one guy's all over there, I'm over here, and we all see it happening, and we're all just like, we're looking at each other through the crowd, like it's like.
And then the worst thing is, you're like, I don't want to make enemies with these people, but like, come on, guys, sort yourselves out. It's really hard. So because I'm just thinking back to when I was, starting in falconry and like what the big issues were back then, because I came in right at the end of wild take in Britain. Like it was like the final kind of like, you could still take peregrines briefly, and then you could take, I think, buzzards and sparrowhawks were the other two. And years later, class, obviously class in Britain is everything in Britain right now. And so back in the day, I remember going to look in the archives of the Royal Society for Protection of Birds, and they had this like group that was set up in the 60s, I think, possibly earlier, to go through all the applications for wild take and decide who was going to get a bird and who wasn't, So it was like someone from the Royal Society for Protection of Birds, someone from the British Falconers Club, stuff like that. And all the transcripts of the conversations, the minutes were there, and it was amazing. It was so funny. So it was like, some kid from the north, from a mining town, had applied to take a peregrine, and he'd flown like loads of other birds and stuff. And they were like, I don't think so. It's not quite the right kind of chap to be flying a peregrine. We'll give him another kestrel. It was literally like that, Wow. And then like, some kind of son of some lord or whatever was like never flown a hawk in his life, said, give him a peregrine, he'll be all right. It was just terrible. Wow. So that was still sort of winding down. And the big issue was what was called commercialism, right? I don't know whether that was a thing or still is a thing in America. You've got a very different system, but it was all about, people breeding birds and selling them for money, and money was like anathema, it should all be done like in an amateur way for love of the game. So, falconry centers, people breeding hybrids, all of these things were like really frowned on. And it's been really interesting watching how that sort of continued or not continued through the years. It's really interesting.
So you came in right at that time. We've never really discussed it too deeply on the show about what was it that, like, how did the whole process of wild take being taken away from you guys? Do you know any details on that?
I mean, basically, birds started to be bred in captivity. And as you know, a lot of the early hybridization experiments were basically done because falconers were really worried that the government would think that if they bred peregrines, that they'd just taken the young from the wild. So they would like literally put hybrid pairs together because it was obvious that they weren't peregrines. So yeah, I think that was happening. And then there was just this massive crackdown in the 70s. So in the 70s, not only did you have the tail end of the DDT era with British peregrines just crashing, sparrowhawks crashing, there was very few left, but you had a whole bunch of people in charge of the RSPB, the main NGO that's to do with birds in Britain, who had been in German prisoner of war camps. They're all officers. So people like Peter Conda. This is such a random fact, but they basically had been like these obsessive bird watchers that were trapped in prisoner of war camps during the war. And when they came out, they started huge campaigns against caged birds and against falconry, right? Because they saw them as being basically captivity, and they hated zoos as well. So these huge campaigns started rolling out, and falconers were a really easy target because, as you know, falconers see themselves as heirs to tradition, and all these falconers who've been taking peregrines for years were told that you can't take them anymore. And they were like, well, fuck that. We're still taking them. They're ours. We've been taking them for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So there were a few early nest thievy things going on. This is way before the Arab market, happened. And falconers were a really easy target for conservation to have an enemy. So egg collectors, falconers, anything like that. And that was kind of death knell, I think, was even before the end of wild take, it was birds being taken from the nest, and falconers being villains. So that was a real problem. It's taken a long time for that story to be. I mean, it kind of almost went, and then suddenly you've got this situation back in the Gulf now where there's falcon races, and Scottish peregrines are really like, I don't know if it still is, but they were kind of very much a primary want. They're really fast, apparently. So yet again, stories are appearing in the media of falconry nest raiding, which is sad. And looking, sorry, I'm going to stop talking a bit because I'm wittering on. But like one of the things that really interesting to me is that when they started developing how falconry would work legally in Britain, it was a really close call between licensing falconers and licensing hawks. So it could have gone either way. It could have gone like the American system, where people could have licensed the falconers, which I think would have been a much better system. But there were so few falconers back then that they were like, nah, let's just do the hawks. There's not many of them. It's not going to be a problem. And it went that way, which has just affected the whole, way that falconry works in Britain. And, anyone could go out and buy a golden eagle tomorrow or a gerfalcon tomorrow, and they needn't know anything. It's a really weird system. Yeah.
It is very foreign to us to think that you have these two groups of people that keep birds. One's falconers and one are just, I don't know. There's probably hobbyists who do a great job of maintaining their birds and have them in nice aviaries, but
I don't know. Sure. I don't know. I mean, I remember going to a country fair once, and I kind of like going to country fairs. They're a bit like state fairs, only smaller. And there's
a lot of fried food there.
So much fried food and cider, hard cider. I remember years ago when I was working at Nick Fox's, I'll get back to the thing. I went to a country fair. It was me, Nick, a whole bunch of working students who weren't really supposed to be working, but were because they were from other countries, but that was a long time ago. So people like Erin Gott, Scott McNeff, that kind of crowd of people. And we went to this, it was the Welsh Game Fair, and I got absolutely blotter one cider. It was a really hot day. And there was the end of this Welsh Game Fair, there was a parachute drop. So the whole point was the guy was going to jump out of this plane with a Welsh flag tied to his leg. It was really exciting. And the guy in the commentary box was narrating the plane going up, and he was also very, very drunk. And I'll never forget, he looked up and he said, and if you look up at the aircraft overhead, you can see the parachute is preparing to ejaculate from the aircraft. It was amazing. It was this hush. It was so good. It's like that moment of pure perfection with the state fair type thing.
That's hilarious.
So, I mean, I went to one about 5 years ago, and there was a falconry section. The Southeast Falconry Group did a little falconry display. It was great. Although I have been to some of these fairs, and the falconry display is basically teaching the audience how to get Harris hawks to land on the floor. That's basically what they're teaching the audience. And this one also had a chickens and ducks and kind of thing. You could go and buy poultry, and then there was a kind of inside bit in this kind of portable shed thing, and inside there were a few kind of lineated parakeets and stuff, and then there was a cage full of American kestrels. looking really, really unhappy, and they had incredibly broken feathers, and they were all imprints. They were screaming nonstop, and I thought, right, that's the hobbyist angle, and I haven't really seen that, and I hated it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So
it is interesting that there's no like structure to it, but there seems as though there seems to be a path if you wanted structure, kind of like yourself, where you went to a falconry school and you volunteered your time and you learned from people that were experienced the right way of doing things. But it seems like you could just do it without that and just get whatever bird you want, and with zero mentorship, which is a little bit crazy.
That is true. Though I guess things like YouTube and stuff kind of helpful, and there are actually there's actually a course now, like a government course, like a government sort of okayed course of falconry that you can do. So it's better than it was, but it's still not optimal. Yeah,
right. But it's not mandatory.
Yeah, but then look back at the Frank Craighead and all that lot. They all kind of they had mentors, but there was a lot of making it up as they went along, which is kind of fun. I had a whole bunch of letters from people after Ages for Hawk came out that were really moving. There was like a 90-year-old guy from Oklahoma who said that when he was a kid, he found a baby red-tailed hawk and he raised it, and he didn't know anything about falconry, but he used to go hunting with it. And I just kind of love stories like that. Like, it's like some people find it even though they know nothing about anything. It still becomes their thing.
Which is great.
Yeah,
no, which is great, and I think that it's a human activity. I mean, it's just part of being human. Falconry, dogs. I mean, all that stuff is part of being human, and I think people should have the opportunity to engage in it. But I think there should be some level of understanding what you're getting into. Like, but because like on all the forums, like the movie that came out was like all over, on Facebook and in groups. And like you would see some of the comments and people were like, oh, this is all, I can't wait for it to come out. And a lot of it was like, oh, they better do a good job, with the
I was terrified
with the falconry angle. And then it was a lot of the comments were like, oh, great, this is gonna spike goshawk. Everyone's gonna be getting goshawks now. But then it was just immediately refuted by people that are like, oh, that'll last for like 2 seasons and people will learn their lesson, And then I was like, oh, great, I hope so, because then there'll be a bunch of cheap goshawks that can be easily fixed, and I can get my hands on
broken goshawks.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I was kind of, I don't know. I was really worried about it. When the film got optioned, they asked me if I wanted to write the script, and I said, no, I don't want to do that. I'm not a dramatic writer, but I said, the one thing that's really important is the falconry is done right. So I need to be up to date with what's going on there. And they got, Lloyd Buck, who's, a really famous falconer bird wrangler here. And I was speaking to him, and he was like, oh God, Helen, when they told me it was going to have to be real goshawks, I was like, oh, bloody hell, how are they going to do that? This is going to be a nightmare. But I think they did a really good job. There's a couple of scenes that make me wince because I wouldn't have done that. Like there's a scene early on when and I can see why they did it for the film, right? There's a bit where a crayons stick goes tumbling on the ground, and I just wince. Like that would never happen.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple of scenes that are meant to show a bird that's ready to fly free that don't. Right. But it's a film. It's a film. But I think it was really fascinating talking to Claire Foy about her experience. So she had 2 weeks to learn falconry before she was doing those scenes.
Really?
And I spoke to her early on. She wanted a Zoom just before they started filming, and it was kind of funny. She appeared on screen in a Zoom, and I'm like, oh man, talking to her for a bit, she's just like me. And then I realized afterwards that actually she was acting. She was actually like honing her. Like, oh my God, we're exactly the same. Oh my God. And I said, like, Claire, are you worried about the falconry thing? She went, well, I did the crown, and the horses never did what I wanted. And I thought, oh no, this is going to be really really bad. But she's extraordinary. I think she's got that ability that I know you guys have, and that, good falconers have, of being able to read really, really tiny nonverbal cues of body language and birds. which is really important with gosses, right? Even their expressions, as you know, is like, and she just clicked into that really quickly. And became obsessed with the birds. She still goes to see one of them. She really loved it, and
Cool.
I think she did a good job. Yeah.
No, she did a really good job. So only 2 weeks to prepare.
Yeah.
So because I want to know a little bit about like behind the scenes. So were you on any of the shooting of the movie? Were you able?
Yeah, I went on set a few times.
Okay.
I went to my old college, which was like such a. I don't think I'm a terrible person, but my God, turning up at your college and discovering like everything's stopped because they're making a film of your life is so cool. It's like, oh man.
Yeah.
So I turn up and I see Claire dressed as me, like from 17 years before, 15 years before, whatever, like wearing my clothes with like, artfully painted like mutes on her trousers made of, with like paint.
Yeah.
Walking around carrying a goss, and I just had this like weird moment. I was like, "Oh my God, like who am I?"
That's crazy. That's got to be such a crazy experience.
It was so weird, and also great because she's really tiny, and the goss looked enormous on her. She's got this massive finished goss.
It looked huge. That looked like a big bird.
It was a big bird, but like obviously also it's really funny that the birds change throughout the movie and no one notices it.
We noticed.
Yeah, we noticed, and we had some questions about that because
there's five birds.
5 different birds. Okay. Now in the scenes when you, but in the movie is like locked away and you're going through the manning process.
Yeah.
That bird, like when I was watching it, I'm like, they're actually like manning a real bird down?
Yeah.
They were.
Yeah.
I knew it. See, Aaron, told you.
Oh, you're acting like I argued with you about that.
You were giving me a little pushback.
There's no way you can get a goss to act. So they had like a few birds. So there was one bird, the main bird that was for most of the film was that really silvery Finnish bird. She's called Jess. She was really chilled. She's actually from a falconry center. So she actually is very used to people. She was the only one that just didn't really care and was super, super great. They had the hunting one that Claire found quite scary because he just wanted to kill shit. As we know, that's what ghost talks are best at. But she found that quite forbidding and exhilarating. There's one giant, really ugly one. I think that was that's the one that they did the Manning scenes from. Yeah. That was the first Babel, and that one was pretty much kept in an aviary until sort of just before then, so that those scenes were real.
The scene of the hawk baiting off the glove during the first stage of manning, that captured how miserable and stressful that is so well.
Isn't it horrible? Like all you want is for the bird to be like fine, and it's like
from her wincing when it's the tips of the wings are hitting her in the face, and you know exactly what that feels like.
Yeah.
Not only that, but you're wondering, is this even going to work? Is this the bird that's not going to do the thing, not get with the program?
Then those moments when it starts to look down on the food and you get that little, it starts snapping its beak. And you're like, come on. It's so stressful.
Yeah, but it's like a roller coaster, though. It's you're like basing like your whole day and your emotions off of little reactions and behaviors from your bird that you're manning.
Oh yeah, you become nuts. You just do, absolutely. You just become you reflect what the bird's doing completely.
Exactly.
And she I had this really interesting. We went to the Telluride Film Festival to premiere the movie, and that was amazing. It was like hanging out with all these Hollywood A-listers. It was so funny. I made such an idiot of myself, hello. So Bruce Springsteen. It was very exciting.
Wow.
All these people, I know that person from somewhere. Oh, it's and there was an interview where we were asked about, the film, and Claire was asked about like what it's like to act with a goshawk, and she initially started saying, you don't really act with a goshawk, and then I think apparently like her publicity people were like, don't say that, it's not going to do your career any good. She's like, well, when you're at drama school, there's this incredible thing that you're told, and it's really useful that when you're on stage on theater, if someone lights a match, no one's going to be looking at you. No one is going to even, and the line is, you can't compete on stage with a lighted match. And she said the goshawk is the lighted match on screen. If there's a goss on screen, no one's looking at me. And I thought that was like a real view into like how kind of she knew who the star of the film was, right? And it's the goss. She really loved it.
It was very surreal to sit there and watch a goshawk filmed in high quality. Just to see, the Hollywood treatment of a goshawk was very weird for me.
Right. And I thought those. So one of the things that I was really excited about, I have seen a lot of goshawk footage, as you'd imagine. I've seen a lot of bird of prey footage. And then Philippa, the director, had been doing these tests with Lloyd. And she said, I got some flight footage. Do you want to see it? And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I was like so offhand. And she sent me this test footage, which was, Lloyd had trained the birds to fly alongside a drone, which I didn't even think was possible with a goss. Like, what the hell? That's like really quite disruptive. And I'd never seen footage like it. Like, there's a bit of that in the film, where you see the birds flying with, and you're flying with them. And I was really pretty emotional about that. I think it was the first footage I'd really seen of goshawks that kind of sort of captured that sense of what it's like when you fly them and you feel your heart is kind of with them when they fly. I was really impressed with that. Yeah,
no, they like Aaron hit the nail on the head with the Hollywood treatment of and like I'm just sitting there watching, and I'm just like, this is, I'm like engulfed in it, like just watching.
I'm so glad.
And I'm like making comments to my wife. I'm like, they're really manning that bird for the movie. She's like, yes, dear. She's like, really? Yeah. She's not like, she's not, she tolerates it. But, and I'm like, no, I'm like that. And I just like, when I was seeing that, I just kept getting more and more interested in the movie. Cause I'm like, all right, they're actually like trying to make this like a real thing. And even like, and I did have some questions about some of the scenes because I know in Europe, so there's like, there's a couple chase scenes, which are obviously like a pheasant flushing and then the bird leaving the glove. And it's like,
and one is like, like 5 miles of pheasants. It's really fun.
Yeah. But then there was a couple, like with the rabbit scene, the bird really looks like it was chasing the rabbit.
Yeah. I was quite impressed with those because I saw the film and I'm like, what the hell? How did they do that? That's like illegal.
Would they go to America to shoot that?
No, not at all. It was CGI.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And I couldn't believe it because I thought they were really quite impressively like rabbits and pheasants. They had like a fleeing rabbit and they had a pheasant flying and then they put the goss in there and then the contact was completely CGI. And then, the birds were then on, the bodies. It's kind of nuts, isn't it, that we can't actually show death on screen, but like I guess that's how it is.
Yeah.
I noticed the rabbit wasn't squealing. That was...
Yeah, there was no
squealing. I wonder how the audience would have responded to that.
There was a couple of, that wouldn't have gone down well, particularly if it was a hare. Yeah, God. It's kind of a rough one.
Squealing for a little while there. Yeah. And those European rabbits are bigger than our cottontails, it seems, so that they don't go down.
They're pretty loud, but there are very few around anymore. It's really sad. Like, 20 years ago, they were everywhere. And now, they had that virus. And, I saw like 2 baby rabbits last week. And I was kind of like, oh, my God, they're back. So
it was all CGI. And the flights through the woods were really cool. We've seen footage like that before. I don't know. What was it like? Aaron, what was that? It was like a nature show. And they had the goss.
Yeah.
And I kept... Yeah, through the trees and tucking its wings and stuff. And I kept having to, my wife was, my kid, everybody was, because I had to keep rewinding it and then pause it right when you can see the little transmitter on the, because there was a transmitter.
Oh, there's a tiny,
on a little tail up on the thing. And when it turns at one set, you could see the antenna flip out. Because I'm like, that's not a wild bird. And they're like, it's got to be a wild bird.
My favorite one of those was the David Attenborough series back in the 70s, Life on Earth, and there's an incredible sequence. I think it was that, or of a bat that catches frogs. Do you ever?
I think I saw that.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
There's a bit where the bat comes down, and if you slow it down, it's a glove with wings sewn to it. That he just.
I did not know that.
It's not good.
I didn't know that either. That's crazy.
But the cameraman is Mark Pengill, who is an amazing wildlife cameraman. So, like, he's pulling shots like, that shot when the goss is coming towards the camera, like low, and you can see the focus gets kind of like comes in and out. That's like literally him just like, there's no focus there.
Wow.
And I met him years ago at Nick Fox's when he was still a young cameraman. a very young cameraman doing, he did some bird of prey work there. So, it's a very small world. In Britain, you've got falconers and animal wranglers and photographers, and we all kind of know each other in the end. It's nice.
Yeah. No, it's cool. Yeah. I also wanted to ask if you had any input on what Falconer, like the team behind that whole aspect of the show, which is like the main point of the movie, if you had any control in who would be on set, who would be in charge of the birds, getting stuff ready.
No, I mean, as soon as Lloyd was involved, I knew it would be done right. And also the big producer woman, Dee Dee Gardner, who is like a super, super big Hollywood person. It's kind of really her deep passion project. So she bought the hawks for it. She bought the hawks, she bought the eggs. She basically reserved them.
Wow.
And she made sure, she was like, and Lloyd, they kind of made sure that when the birds were on set, it was a closed set. I mean, they treated it like a porn movie, like basically. Like there was like no one was meant to be, no one could be there unless they were actually in that scene. People were hiding behind furniture. Obviously they couldn't use the fluffy zooms because, either it would freak out the goss or the goss would want to kill them. They filmed a lot in the house that was, in Wales, and, the entire production team was upstairs. They put all the monitors upstairs, not downstairs. So it was it was really carefully done. And then the hunting shots at the end, all the hunting scenes were done with like a skeleton crew. There was like 2 or 3 people. Lloyd made everyone wear green and black and brown, and no one was allowed to wear bright colors. I mean, the whole film was basically done around, the keeping the hawks happy, which is, the only way they could have done it, I guess. So.
Yeah. Oh, they could have tried it any other way, but it would have probably.
they could have used Harris hawks then.
It seems like, yeah.
I did fly a Harris for a bit. I think I probably ought to confess that right now. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But he was quite slow.
They're extremely slow. And they look just like a crow, basically.
Bolivian parrots, as I would say them.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Wow.
Once you've flown a goshawk, it's really hard to fly other things.
I know. See, we've ruined ourselves, haven't we? It's terrible.
I agree.
Mind you, when we get really, really old, we'll get back to Harris's. When we have
that's what I said.
Yeah.
Harris hawks are for the old and infirm.
I've been flying red-tailed hawks, Helen.
Red tails.
So, my goshawk passed away last year, and then if we want to talk about tragedies, I bought an imprint goshawk, baby. I bought a baby and raised it as an imprint, and she was killed by a wild red tail.
Oh,
and eaten.
And eaten. It was a tame hack. I don't know if tame hacking is common.
I've done tame hacking in Britain. It's done it used to be done quite a bit for Arab market birds, but isn't so much now because people have built the big pens. But yeah, it's hard. It's heart in mouth time every time. I'm so sorry, man.
It's been rough for me, but I had a great season with the wild red tail that I caught, and But while I was out with Casey this year, and I would see his goshawk fly, I'm like, man, I miss it. I feel so left out not having a goshawk.
Yeah, it's not the same. Although, I mean, I've been out squirrel hawking in Maine with red tails, and I remember seeing passage red tails. I couldn't believe how hard they'd hit like banks of brambles to go through to get squirrels and rabbits and stuff. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
There's something really magical about red tails as well.
Yeah. They're just like pickup trucks, man. I just love them. They're really cool.
The wild one, I don't know actually, I have a captive born red tail now, which is very unusual in America because we can just go trap wild ones pretty easily. I have a dark morph captive red tail that's
so pretty. Is it a proper critus? Has it got like a brown tail as well, or has it got like a red?
I'll show you when we're done so you can see it.
Yeah. I'll show you my parrot
right here behind me.
So
nice. But there is something really really ethereal about red tails too, in a different way. But if a goshawk grabs you, there's nothing that can replace a goshawk. I wanted to, before we get off the subject of the movie, I wanted to ask you a couple things too.
Yeah,
the photo album. Me and Casey were wondering about that in the movie. Was that was your? I'm assuming that was you, right?
Yeah, it's all me. It's really fun, actually. They were like, "Don't tell anyone." I'm like, "Come on, it's obviously me." And they're like, "No, people think it's Claire because you look so alike." Yeah, that's all me.
You guys really did resemble each other.
Yeah, I can't remember. There's a kestrel in there. That was at the place where I learned to dig holes. The Hawk Conservancy in Way Hill, with a really bad 1970s like parka on, like one of those plastic parkas with the fake fur. Amazing. There's a kestrel. That's my first. Yeah, they're all real me.
That's awesome. Good.
And then how did you feel about Brendan Gleeson portraying your dad?
It was really funny. My mom was really unhappy about it because my dad was a really good looking guy and didn't look like Brett. Brendan Gleeson is incredibly hot. I think he's a really hot guy, which is weird to say because he plays my dad, but let's not go there. That's just too weird. But my mom was like, I don't think they should use him. He's not hot enough. We need someone like Alain Delon or someone. Alain Delon is dead.
We need someone who's ripped.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, Alan Richardson or someone. And she's like, no. So she was really unhappy about it. And, everyone that, we were like, Mom, Brendan Gleeson is weirdly like my dad. They don't physically resemble each other, but he's got exactly the same thing inside, which is like he's got this kind of unreconstructed maleness, if that makes sense. Like he's just a man, and he's got a huge heart, right? And that was my dad. And those scenes with Claire and Brendan were really moving to me because it really captured like our friendship. Like, we basically, I heard the film being described as the story of two wildly neurodivergent people in a family because he was like obsessed with aeroplanes and I was the falconer. So we just kind of, we knew our obsessions. And when I first saw him, I went to the set in Wales and this van drove up and he got out. He's very, very tall. And he looked at me and he had this like really worried expression on his face. And he was wearing a suit like my dad wore, and he was wearing like my dad's anorak kind of thing. And he said, in this kind of really worried voice, it must be pretty weird seeing me dressed as in your father's clothes, Helen. And there was something about the way his face kind of crumpled up as he said it that I just thought, oh, mate. And I just gave him a big hug and said, hello, film dad. I thought he was magnificent in it. And he's such a nice bloke.
Yeah.
And he said that the reason he did this role, he said, because there are so few roles for good dads in Hollywood and in films and in TV now. Everyone's always a deadbeat dad or a lame dad or a bad dad. He's like we need to have more good dads. And I really think that's brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah.
I watched the film with my daughter. She's 6.
Hello.
And I pointed out to her at the end that was the guy that played Mad-Eye Moody in Harry Potter.
Exactly. My nieces are psyched. Like, Granddad was Mad-Eye Moody.
Yeah, it just the whole movie, and it has to be like a huge change for your whole life and your family and stuff like that. Is this like how did this come about? So you wrote the book.
Yeah.
And then it's through a publicist, right? And then you had the option to license it for a movie.
Yeah, that happened really quickly after the book came out. And the person who first optioned it was Lena Headey from Game of Thrones, that Queen Cersei, who was amazing.
The Shame woman?
Yeah, the Shame.
Yeah, Shame.
The Shame woman. She's great, and she read it and fell in love with it. Before it was even successful, she just said, I really want to play you, and I love this book. And so she bought the option, and then sort of time went by, and then it just, for a number of reasons, it didn't kind of work out. And in the end, it ended up not being her. And then in my mind, there's still a kind of film where she played me. I think she would have been great. I think she kind of basically aged out of the role, which is sad. Mm. But I met her a few times, and, I'd go and sort of see her, and all my friends would be like, if she offers you wine, don't drink it, it'll be poisoned. And I'm like, dude, no, she's not actually an evil queen.
Wow.
And then it just went on from there. And it's difficult to get a film like that made. It's not a Hollywood movie. It's not got the beats of a Hollywood movie. It's not like a Marvel movie. It's not about like He-Man or any IP that anyone's used to. And it's like Hollywood is really conservative in the sense that it's kind of nervous of making things like that now. So it was hard to get the funding. I think they did an amazing job. The director is incredible. And I think the soundtrack is amazing. I mean, it's just such a beautiful little film.
It is.
I'm really pleased
No,
with
it really is.
I don't really feel responsible for it. It's like its own thing, you know? It's like I told my story, and then when you said just now about it must be really weird for the family, I think it's oddly not. It's like this. It's like a retelling of the same story, but it's not. It doesn't really feel like us, even though Claire's impersonation of me is terrifyingly accurate.
Yeah,
yeah.
So so you had one Zoom call with her. She didn't like sit with you, like, you know, like, don't they do that sometimes in movies where like the actor wants to spend as much time as they can to try to pick up your mannerisms and stuff? So she just based it all off of the book or things she knew about.
Well, there's a lot of me on YouTube because I've done a lot of book talks and stuff, you know, and you listen to the audiobook over and over again too, to get my, you know, weird voice, which is fake, by the way. I grew up in it's much more like a London voice early on, but I went to University of Cambridge and I had to learn this voice as a kind of defensive shield because everyone is posh there. So this is my fake voice that I use all the time now. So she learned, so she basically learned it from the internet.
Okay. All right.
You know, on the subject of voices, Brendan Gleeson, when he was talking at the end about the river, and I looked at my wife and I said, he must be Scottish. And she looked up and she said, no, he's Irish. And I said, her dad must have been Scottish.
It's a great, yeah.
So that was, am I right about that? That he was doing a voice that's not his actual speaking voice, right? He was doing your dad's voice. Yeah,
it's actually quite funny. He wasn't doing my dad's voice. My dad had a London accent. My dad's dad was Scottish from the Isle of North Uist. So my grandfather, my dad's side, didn't speak English until he was a teenager. It was all Gaelic up there, you know. But my dad grew up in London, in Hammersmith. So in the same kind of part of London, I think the same road as Roger Daltrey, you know, in West London, and had a London accent. But Brendan wasn't happy with doing a London accent. He's like, I can't do a good one. So, but can I do a Scottish accent? And we just thought that was a really good solution. So, you know,
yeah. Okay, because I noticed it in the beginning when he was on the lawnmower.
Yeah.
And how much did I also wanted to know? Well, you probably don't. You probably don't know.
Casey wants to know if the grass was real. Was he really cutting grass?
No. I want to know how much
real grass in a real lawn. Yeah.
I want to know how much John Deere paid to have them in the movie.
I've just heard about the John Deere lawsuit thing going through. Right? Did you hear about?
No, I did not.
Yeah. So they've just had to pay people, like, I don't know how many thousands, millions of dollars, because people were trying to repair their own tractors, and John Deere's like, you're not allowed to do that.
Oh, yes.
They took him to court and they won. So
John Deere won?
No, people won.
No. There's a whole conspiracy going on in the United States where farmers, Bill Gates, people are there's a conspiracy that they don't want family farms to continue. Yeah. And they want to control the food and this and that. So what's happening is, and it seems like a conspiracy, but I've been watching a bunch of stuff on it. I live in an agricultural area, so I'm kind of hearing things from people. And basically, these farmers rely on their tractor for their livelihood, to produce the food, to sell. And when their tractor breaks down, they're getting a lot of issues with getting the tractor repaired. Yeah. And they're saying now the conspiracy is that they're doing that on purpose to try to make the small family farm fail so that they can't continue and they have to sell, and then it can all be controlled.
You know what? Like 10 years ago, I'd have been like, I don't know, that's a stretch. But now I'm like, seems legit.
Well, I mean, it kind of does, because the tractor, I mean, the people don't understand. They're like, oh, these hillbilly these farm
Deere is everything.
Yeah. And I'm like, you see that tractor? I tell my son all the time, see that tractor out in the field there? I said, how much do you think that tractor costs?
Oh my God, they're like houses.
It's like a lot of money. I was like, that's a $750,000 machine that hillbilly's driving around.
Yeah.
I said, that's double what our house costs when mommy and daddy bought it. And that guy's driving around it. So when it breaks, it has to be repaired. And if they can't get John Deere or whoever who's licensed to fix it because they're too busy or whatever's going on, they have to try to fix it themselves.
Yeah.
So that makes perfect sense that they would try to sue them.
Yeah.
It's called right to repair, Casey.
Yeah, no,
That's a big deal.
I'm really pleased that it's gone the way it has. Sorry to any John Deere executives that are listening to this podcast.
Well, I got a John Deere sitting outside. I love
We're
John
big
Deere.
with John Deere.
Yeah, we like John Deere.
Yeah, I got a John Deere. There's a franchise down the road from where I used to live, so I'll wave at it from you guys when I go past next.
My son's little hat.
Oh, there it is. Love it.
He wears when he cuts the grass with me.
Where was I last? A few years ago, I was with friends in Maryland, and they were talking about it. There's loads of it's one of those there was a massive John. Sorry, this is not falconry, is it? But whatever. We're going into John Deere now.
We're talking tractors now.
We're talking tractors. There was a huge tractor place there. It was like I was so impressed with it. And my friends are talking about how back in the day, I think in the 50s, they had like this area in Maryland had a new like a priest or a pastor who came to the community, and he was really religious, and he started telling all the farmers that having more than one barn was like a sign of too much luxury, and that we should have fewer barns, and they just ran him out of town. Just like, no, mate, sorry.
Don't tell an American that you have too much, all right?
Yeah, you can't be having too many barns. That's ludicrous.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You can never have enough barns,
you
right?
You can never have enough barns.
Were your friends in Maryland? Were they falconers?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, they weren't falconers. I was really impressed with the ospreys around there, though. I mean, growing up Britain, this weird thing has happened in Britain where, we had like a whole bunch of birds of prey wiped out. Before DDT, it was mostly gamekeepers and like sporting interests would like shoot them out in the 19th century, earlier 20th, and then a few kind of hung on in parts of Britain where there weren't so many, so many shoots, and so there were a few red kites in Wales. These poor birds in Wales were like, they were kind of feeding. There's no food there. They were feeding off kind of the lamb's tails that had been cut for the old corpses, and they were doing really badly. And then there were like a few ospreys up in Scotland. And when I was a kid, like to see a red kite or an osprey was like, it was like lifetime experience of seeing these things. And then, ever since now, there's ospreys everywhere and there's red kites everywhere. And it's just like, I feel like I'm in a sort of sci-fi movie where I look out the window and there's like, there are clouds of red kites overhead. But going to Chesapeake Bay and seeing these ospreys everywhere just freaked me out, man. There's so many of them. It's like they're like seagulls. It was incredible.
No, literally like seagulls. We went to I hate the beach. Just it's just personal. Like my mom dragged us there when we were kids.
Yeah.
It's been 12 hours all day in the burning hot sun all day as a fair skin. Why? Like I'm like, why are we here all day anyway? But so
I go pink and then it just falls off my head. My skin falls off.
Exactly. But my wife, she loves the beach, and my son. So we go, and I'm forced to be there. But I just found myself noticing that when you're sitting at the beach, there are just one after the other ospreys.
Amazing.
And you can't tell because they kind of fit in with the seagulls a little bit. You got to kind of watch the cadence of the wing beat.
That little kink in the wings. Yeah.
And then and I just sat there. I watched it all day. I must have watched 50 catch fish, and they fly out. And then if you don't keep them in your eyesight the whole time, you'll lose sight. They'll just kind of fade out and you can't see them anymore. Yeah. But if you can keep your eye on them long enough, you'll watch them just drop all the way out there and just smash the water, and then get up and then fly back with the fish. And then like 5 seconds later, another one comes on the other side, smack all day long. Just bring in, I think it was probably like,
they work hard, those creatures.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
there's a really great book on ospreys there's an American nature writer, David Gessner, who wrote a book about the ospreys in Maryland. And it's kind of gonzo. It's a bit gonzo. There's a whole point in this book where I love David Gessner because he wrote this book called Sick of Nature. And it's about like being a nature writer sucks. People think you're just like walking around in your pajamas, you can't swear or laugh or tell dirty jokes. You've just got to be kind of reverent. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of, I feel that. But yeah, this book's great. There's a bit where he tries to eat like a herring with his teeth to try and rend it like a osprey. At one point he jumps into the water. It's kind of like, I want to know what it's like to be an osprey. It's hilarious. And it's a really good book. So highly recommend that one. It's called In Search of the Osprey, I think.
Oh, that's cool.
I actually wanted to ask you, being an author, what falconry books do you recommend?
Oh man, what to learn falconry, or because
just some good books that you've read as an author and a falconer. What do you?
I was raised on falconry. The Philip Glazier one was my go-to book when I was a kid, so I kind of remember It's a bit like when you. I don't know if you're too young for this, but when I was a kid, there was always like 2 or 3 DVDs or 2 or 3 VCRs in the house. You'd have like a video of like a movie and you'd learn it because it was the only one you had. So my brother and I would we learned Silver Streak, and there was a couple of other ones we'd learn these movies by heart because we just watched them over and over again. And that book is like that, the falconry book. It's got these beautiful line drawings, and I'd make equipment. So that one I think was a really decent book, and that's where my falconry comes from. I think Nick Fox's book is good as well. It's very clear. But also I think there are books which are not falconry books that I really love. Ronald Stevens wrote a book called Laggard about training a juror, one of the first jurors to come to Britain.
I have it. I've never read it. It's sitting on my...
it's a good one. It's a good one. He was a strange one. I mean, we all...
Didn't he write a few books about jeers?
Yeah, he was really obsessed with jurors. He was the first kind of, he could kind of cope with the fact that they didn't behave in this efficient way like peregrines. And he was like, they're quite playful and they're quite fun. And they he was really into that. Whereas a lot of the falconers at that age were like, what the hell? What are these idiots?
I like that a lot. I think we have fine-tuned things to a certain degree just in the world, not just in falconry, but we can fine-tune things so much that they're no longer interesting to me.
Oh, yeah. I know what you mean.
Casey and I have had this discussion, and maybe you are, but MMA, for mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
Now it's so boring to watch because these guys know the formula for exactly how to win these fights. Yeah. And the days of when it was the Wild West and you had guys that had unorthodox styles that were maybe not the most efficient.
Yeah.
It was entertaining.
I had a boyfriend who was a bare knuckle fighter at one point. That my mum was not happy with that at all.
I can't imagine why.
He was reformed. He was a reformed character, but there always tell tales of waking up in a telephone box full of money covered in blood. That kind of story. But I think I always felt a bit like that with when the whole operant conditioning, McDermott, the formula is something that American falconers, I think, it feels like they've always been trying to find the formula. Mm. Whereas in Britain, it's never really been like that. It's like, you have the kind of the recipe, but it's not the recipe. You can just sort of
I like that.
muddle your way through. Yeah.
I really like that.
That's
actually, we had talked about this before. We had a falconer on from over there named Steve Wash, and he talked about he's creating an apprenticeship program for his group of people, for his apprentices or for people who want to get into falconry, and the things he'll do as a sponsor for them.
Right.
And we talked about how goshawks here are seem to be viewed very differently than they are over there. And
is that because, finally they've split, right? But American goshawks are just very different beasts from Europeans. Is that partly?
It's not even the root of it.
It's not. I don't know. I don't think that's what you would think, but I don't think that's in the States. The goshawks, even the European ones, that are far more easy to deal with, they're all viewed as they're not. They're split. What is it? What's the word?
A taxonomic split. Yeah.
Taxonomic. Thank you very much. Just a plumber. The split, but over in America, we don't recognize it yet because then it'll open up a whole can of worms of, exotics and stuff like that. But to Aaron's point, if somebody's they've flown, red tail, they go through their apprenticeship 2 years, and then in their third year, they're like, I want a goshawk. There will be just loads of people no, bad idea. You need more experience. Do not do that. You're not ready for it. You may think you are. You're not ready for it.
Yeah.
But to Aaron's point, in Europe, it's just go out and buy one and you have a good time.
But that's also, I think Britain is more like America in that regard. I think you do get a lot of that. I had a lot of people going, what are you thinking? But if you go to the continents, you idiots. You go to Germany or France, goshawks are just standard. Sweden, or not Sweden because they're not falconry there. But basically it's what you fly, right? It's what you fly goss. And that seems chill to me, but it isn't the case here. Yeah. I think it's still like America. It's what are you thinking? It's going to be crazy town.
Well, there was that. Yeah. You talked about that in the book, that the discouraging you from doing it, but it seems like it is a little more prevalent than it is here, that even seasoned falconers here are, they go crazy if you talk about flying a goshawk.
But why, when there's Coopers and Sharpies, would you be stressed about a ghost? I don't get it. Like,
they're not many people fly Coopers or sharp-shinned hawks here. Even though Cooper's hawks are so readily available, they're not commonly flown here. And
I mean, I would say they're commonly flown, but it's not the largest percentage of birds that are flown by any means.
If you go to a field meet, you're probably not going to see someone there with Cooper's hawk.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
And like, I remember that someone pointed, what was that great line about, just thank God they're not venomous, which was my favorite line about Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't know. Well, I hope the film doesn't make people want to fly goshawks, because
I think they would very quickly change their mind, because
I hope
you have to fly them.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, you never know. Before I get decrepit, there might be another ghost. I think I'd go imprint next time.
It also seems that in Europe there doesn't seem to be as many imprints. Is that a true statement, or is that just my anecdotal?
And I think that's the McDermott thing. Again, I think Mike McDermott, as far as I know, we I don't know whether people follow his recipe still, but there's no bag quarry in Britain. You can't throw live things to a young bird.
That's a good point.
So there's not really. Again, it's tricky.
Suspected. Sorry, Helen. We suspected that plenty of falconers probably do what they have to do.
Yeah. Wink, wink. Yeah. No, I mean, it goes on, particularly in game hawking. Although I'm kind of, I'm really screwed with game hawking, because I'm allergic to dogs, which sucks, and cats and deer and hares and foxes. I mean, you name it. I mean, most mammals will just, send me into kind of like a wheezing mess, which is a disaster. Yeah. And I've always not been able to do proper game hawking if I was able to, I'd be I'd be out, doing that. But I've just discovered that people are starting to use the heat, the heat binoculars
Thermal?
where you can see,
thermal drone,
not thermal drone so much as the thermal binoculars. So you can scan a field of winter wheat, and you can see where the partridges and pheasants are. And everyone's like, "Oh, that's not fair." And I'm like, "Yeah, but if you can't have a dog, it does mean that might be make game hawking possible for me. So you never know. I might have to go with that."
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. In most states in the U.S., it's illegal to use thermals. Yeah.
Is that because they've got Chinese components, or because it's illegal?
That's what they try to say. I think it's just like fair chase. I think they don't want anything to do with that. I mean, there's guys that do it, and I don't know, if scouting is illegal. Like if you scouting, if you're driving in your truck, let's say in Kansas or something, and then you just look out your window and see a bunch of jackrabbits kind of in their little.
How are you supposed to find things? I don't understand. You just walk around with a dog.
I guess. Yeah, okay. Just walk out with a dog, or just work the field. But I think I'm not sure. Some states are probably different. And like I said, I'll probably get a bunch of messages now correcting me. No,
it's fascinating stuff. I mean, I'm always really interested in. I remember I started a PhD years ago on the history of American falconry. It was really fun to do, and then I didn't finish it because I'm hopeless. But I remember reading a lot about those early days, and just the way in which game management and kind of the way that hunting works in America is just so different from Europe. It's just insane. It's really interesting. There were all these. I remember reading this amazing piece by a guy after World War II, saying that America was great because in Britain and Europe you have these aristocrats and stuff like that, and it's all Nazi stuff. It's all who you know means where you can hunt, but in America it's really democratic and you can hunt anywhere. And I don't know, it was really interesting to read all that stuff. But I guess everything's kind of changing. So
yeah, it's changing. We're losing hunting locations left and right, and everybody likes to say that I'm a huge Trump guy, but Trump trying to sell off our public land, that's not,
that sucks.
Can't have that. That's not happening.
No, the public lands are,
they don't have that over there, do they?
No, we don't get that. You got kind of national trust and stuff like that. And they used to allow falconry, but I think, again, they got pressure to stop it, which is a shame. So it's hard now. It's hard. When I was learning falconry and getting my first birds and stuff like that, it was super easy to find somewhere to fly. And I think that's one of the very few times in which being not a man was helpful to me, because I'd be like, hello, can I fly my falcon? They'd be like, oh, of course. Yeah. And there was a lot of I did a lot of poaching with Mabel, and I feel really bad about that now, but I was kind of nuts. And, I remember there's a part of Britain in Norfolk, which is like the place to go if you want to shoot geese or have a yacht or be very rich, right? It's very much kind of sporting, old school Victorian kind of 19th century sporting kind of county. And I went there and made a mistake of in a talk about the book, making a joke about poaching, and it went down so badly that, I was in big trouble. Like everyone shunned me afterwards.
Really?
Yeah, it's no joke. But I remember I discovered that the rudest that a very well-bred British woman can be to you if they discover you poaching on their land is, "Can I help you?" Which is basically "fuck off" is what that means. But
it means that here in the States too. Yeah.
Is it?
Oh yeah,
Can I help you?
Oh, I can't even count. I'll be on somewhere I can totally be, which is not, state property, whatever. And somebody on, their fence, and they'll come up to their fence and they'll ask me, "Can I help you?" I'm like,
isn't it?
I don't really need any help.
That's when I heard like that. So I spent 9 months at the P Fund and the archives for researching stuff. In fact, that was in 2001. I was at Dan Conkle's when the towers got hit. That was a moment.
Wow.
I was watching TV. I think was I manager at the time for Conkle? I was with my friends. We watched it all unfold. It was absolutely horrifying. And then Conkle came in dressed in a Gulf Arab outfit because he was getting his falcons used to that outfit. And he looked at what was going on and he just said in this incredibly dry voice, "I think I better go get changed." Anyway, after that,
that's funny.
My friend Aaron and I can't remember who he was with. Anyway, whatever. But he was hawking somewhere remote, and this truck. He watched a truck come down miles and miles and miles of come up to him, and he was rolled down the window, and he was like, "Are you boys terrorists?" And he's like, "No, sir." And he's like, "Okay," and he just drove back. It was a rough time, but yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely a rough time. My sponsors are Syrian, and I've been friends with them my whole life, and I could see it just by proxy of them. It was a rough time for everyone.
It was rough. It was really
they're Christians too, which is so it's even more.
Yeah.
They look Italian though.
Yeah, they love to hear that. Oh man! So I did have another question about the movie that's escaping me. No, it came back. So when you said that you made a joke about poaching, which is just it's just fun. It's fun to joke. Really we joke about it on the show too all the time. Just I meet an apprentice. I just met one this past season, and I'm like, "How many times did you get out this year with your new bird?" And he's like, "Oh, I like maybe it's 5-6 times." And I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Oh, I've been working real hard on getting permissions," and and I'm like, "Permissions?" I'm like, "Just go fly your bird." He's like, "Oh, but don't you need permission?" I'm like, "Yeah, technically you need permission, but if there's no trespassing signs, or it's corporately owned, or it's behind a shop, right, or come on, you're not in somebody's backyard, as long as you're not interfering."
That's so American of you, Casey. I remember looking back, actually, it's very, very funny. So when I was again, a really young falconer, I'd constantly go out with all these falconers in places that, they go to Salisbury Plain and various really old traditional places. We go rook hawking and we go duck hawking or whatever, and the partridge hawking. And, I was such a clueless child. I just had no idea why we kept meeting gamekeepers with shotguns. Really unhappy with us. None of these people had permission there, but I had no clue, I just was like, "Oh, this is a nice flying ground." They'd be like, "Yep."
Yeah.
So, it was pretty rife.
Yeah. Yeah. And that happens here. And, most times nothing happens. It's owned by a corporation that's going to bulldoze it anyway and put condos. Yeah. So as far as I'm concerned, I have and this is probably whatever, but I feel like it's a moral it's moral for me. Like I'm in the moral high ground. So
Yeah.
go fly my bird in here because you're going to destroy the ecosystem anyway.
This is one of the things that I say to people that are like, falconry, blah, blah. And I'm just like, look, falconry is such a low impact sport on the environment. Like, I probably do less damage going hawking for a season than you do making one trip to a multiplex cinema, like, come on.
100%. Now that's a perfect segue. I wanted to ask the one scene in the movie, which basically just like encapsulated like most falconers, especially falconers that are online, that maybe do speeches like that. It kind of encapsulates what we deal with on a day-to-day basis, like people getting ultra offended by what you do and then wanting to debate and engage with you.
Yeah.
Was that a real, I'm sure it was a real situation
well, actually, no, that was probably the only made up bit in the whole film. And, I think the writers of the film decided that was going to be the best way to introduce the fact that, there was a reason why I was doing it. And I thought really seriously about it. In many ways, we don't see death anymore as a culture, or a shared culture. And one of the things, when I flew Mabel, it wasn't a situation like, I was sad, I got a hawk, and then I was happy again. She was a real education in the I guess, this is going to sound a little bit wanky, but it's, the great mystery that is life and death. If you go hawking and you go hunting, you see how thin that line is between life and death every day. And it becomes more and more puzzling, And I kind of needed to think about that shit after my dad died. So that was part of what was going on. And I'm really glad they put that in the movie where she tries to explain that, falconry, what falconry is. And I hope falconers kind of like that bit, even though she kind of loses it at that idiot.
Yeah.
I didn't meet anyone that idiotic, but everything that guy said in the film about, can't they eat birdseed? I've heard that from people. We all have, right?
Yes.
Along with why have they only got one leg, which was my all-time favorite.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a very, very common, very, very, very common of the general public. They're like completely oblivious. And it's kind of like, you don't want to be rude, but it's like, I can't be responsible for like your ignorance. Like people birdseed, you know what I mean?
No, it's true. And people's biological and environmental knowledge is like, people are really ignorant, and it's not their fault. They just haven't been taught anything. It's not about being dumb. It's just not having been exposed to some stuff.
Reality.
Yeah.
It's I mean, and it's bizarre when somebody will say something like that, and then you click on their profile picture and they have 10 cats.
Yes,
and I'm like, do you know, like your cat, like if you feed your cat anything but meat, it will just like start having seizures and dying. Like it has to eat meat.
Right. And meanwhile, it goes out and like, is hauling down birds left, right, and center. Like
that's just a no brainer that should not be going on.
Like, it's natural. And you're like, it's not natural. This cat is fully fed. It doesn't need to be doing,
Yeah. So, and it's not natural because it's not even a wild animal. It's just it's a genetic, it's a human. We bred it, we created it into a pet. So it's not natural. Like us going out with our birds is 100% natural. Just me being there, maybe I'm helping. My dogs are helping, but it's like what is actually going on here is completely natural. It's just a daily occurrence,
Absolutely.
I
compare it with like cars. Like if you drive around here, like the amount of toll you see on the road of stuff just being hit, And I always say, pheasants and partridges and shit have got like, millions of years of evolution to how to evolve hawks. They don't know how to avoid cars, It's just, they haven't got a chance.
Exactly.
So.
It is interesting when you take a gun hunter out to see your hawk chase something that they shoot. Yeah. And they see that whole other side of that animal.
They're like, oh my God, pheasants are clever. What?
Yeah. I can't believe squirrels will corkscrew around trees to avoid that.
They haven't evolved to avoid lead.
And you don't appreciate rabbits until you've seen them avoiding hawks. And they're essentially trying to kill the hawk.
Yeah.
Whether they know it or not, they're trying to put metal obstructions between them and the hawk for the hawk to hit it. And
Yeah, it's
very, very clever. And and the squirrel hunting thing is fascinating. And I don't know, is squirrel hunting, is that like a frowned upon thing when in your community?
Yeah, I mean, I've caught squirrels with Harris's, and I caught a squirrel with Mabel, and I was just too scared to do it. I mean, it was like I was just heart in mouth the entire time. You know, I've been squirrel hawking with passage red tails in America, and I was pretty chill about that because I think they know how to handle them. These were Maine red tails, and they were catching squirrels in Maine. Like they know the score, but I'm just too scared about losing toes. I'm just a wuss. So I really admire
it's a valid concern.
Your ballsiness when it comes to that. You know?
Well, squirrels are, I'm going to do a whole YouTube video about this, but there's many of the studies, goshawks are in a lot of areas, they're feeding predominantly on tree squirrels. It's part of their.
Yeah. I mean, here, when they were filming, I did a documentary before this film where I trained a goss, and we had an amazing cameraman in the Forest of Dean filming a wild nest, and like 90% of the stuff they were bringing to the nest was gray squirrels, American gray squirrels. So,
wow. Yeah. How can we watch that documentary?
Oh, I'll see if I can find out. It's called Ages for Hawk, the next chapter, and it's basically actually me training a hawk.
Cool.
So
I don't know. I don't think I've never seen that. Yeah.
It's a PBS Nature did it. It's a BBC PBS thing.
Okay.
It's a few years ago now, but it might be on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll look for it. Yeah. I'd love to watch that. But yeah, it's just and it's even more fascinating when they do nest studies.
Yeah.
And then when you actually dive into the natural history and the behavior of the male and female on the nest, the male is doing most of the hunting.
Yeah.
So when they're bringing squirrels back to the nest, it's even more insane if you think about it, because now you understand that the tiercel is the one actually catching a lot of those squirrels. The little tiercel, those little itty bitty toes, is catching those squirrels. And it's like
right under the jaw. Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's like, so yeah, with me, it's not so much ballsiness. It's just I just like to, I just get them going on squirrels, fat and kind of playfully in the beginning. And then once they learn that they're going to get bit, or that the squirrel knows how to bite, it's like right in their DNA to just.
They get serious about dealing with that. That makes sense.
Dealing with it.
That makes sense. And I think there's always going to be, but rabbits, I've seen rabbits take hawks' toes off in the past when I've been outside.
Really? Biting them?
Yeah. No,
wow.
Cottontails won't bite, but those European rabbits will.
Yeah.
They do. Oh God, I remember a terrible story I heard about this years ago. Guy who didn't know how to dispatch rabbits. I don't know if this is true or apocryphal, but it made me laugh so much, and it's so grim. So this guy had those really expensive handmade knives. Someone had saved up and got some guy to make like a beautiful handmade hunting knife. And he went out hawking with his Harris, and Harris caught a rabbit, and he was like, I'm going to kill the rabbit with this knife. And he like split the skull of this rabbit with a knife, or tried to, which is like a dumb way to kill a rabbit. And then the rabbit got up and kicked and then ran off with the knife into the undergrowth. And the guy's like, my knife, and like running after it. Couldn't find it, right? And was really, really angry that he'd lost his like beautiful made incredibly expensive knife. And his hawk was hacked off too because he'd lost the rabbit. And then they were driving home and they found the rabbit. It got run over with the knife still in its head. And this guy was like, oh man, that rabbit had a really rough day. He got out the car, just picked it up and got in the car and drove home. Yeah,
that's crazy.
The world's roughest day for a rabbit happened, I think, that one.
I can imagine it staggering in the road like
I know. In a movie. Whoever ran it over was like, I don't want to even get involved with that. I don't know what's going on. So.
You just got mugged.
Yeah. It gets worse. The car's tire popped or something.
Probably. Yeah.
Wow.
I wanted to ask you one. I have one more question for you, Helen. Yeah. What edition of your book do you prefer? There's a lot out there.
What edition?
I've seen there's the folio edition that has some illustrations in it, and
the super expensive one. That's beautiful, but I don't think. I mean, if you want a super fancy, beautiful one, then that's the one. It's really gorgeous. Like not just the pictures, but the way the typeset goes. But it's like it's a kind of premium, expensive edition. I mean, I really like because I've always, I really like just the, your bog standard paperback. I love paperbacks. You can read them in the bath. You can drop stuff on them. I remember a guy coming to me once and pushing a book in front of me to sign, and it was like covered in dried blood. And I looked at him and he went, "It wasn't a rabbit. I had a nosebleed." And I'm like, "Oh man, that's really wrong." I just gave him my copy. I'm like, I don't
like
you
that's better.
sign that. Yeah.
Like, I'll touch rabbit blood. I really don't want to touch your blood, though.
No, I don't know. Like, I remember years ago, I did a talk, and then afterwards there was a dinner, and like in my honor, it was like at a local restaurant, and they served rabbit, and I just couldn't eat it, man. I'd had so much bad rabbit. I can't eat it still because of some of the rabbits I ate with Mabes. But yeah, so I think that, you know, the straightforward, if you're in America, it's Grove Atlantic that did the paperback. It's got a great picture on the cover, and, you know, it's got a sticker on now saying, "Now a major motion picture."
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
That is amazing. It's incredible. Yeah. So now, are you thinking of any more books in the future that you're thinking?
Yeah, I'm writing on it. In fact, this morning I was researching the SOSUS network, you know, the underwater looking for submarines network. I'm writing a book on Midway Atoll, which is very late, and I've been there a couple of times, and it's an incredible place. So, as you know, it's like a tiny atoll in the Pacific, middle of nowhere, a couple of square miles, former naval air station. So it's full of kind of crumbling barracks and buildings, and, you know, like a million birds. It's got like, you know, almost 700,000 albatrosses.
Wow.
So you get there and you fly in on a little Falcon jet. You have to land at night because there are so many albatrosses in the daytime that, you know, you can't actually land. And then you get out the plane, and there are so many petrels, bone-in petrels in the air, that they're just constantly brushing your hair as you walk. And
wow,
like it's incredible. It's the most otherworldly place imaginable.
Wow. And
I want to write about it because it's doomed, right? Like, because the sea level's rising, and this kind of, you know, it's a very, very beautiful and weird place, but also it's kind of like the ruins of the 20th century, you know, this kind of naval air station, and it's just an incredible place. And I it's just very late, this book. So I want to write that. And then I wrote a crazy sci-fi book during the pandemic with a friend of mine, which is this weird kind of like, sci-fi book about the weaponization and nostalgia. So I've got like lots of different books going, but I'll get back to hawks at some point. I want to make loads of money, and then I can retire and fly hawks.
Yeah.
That's the plan. You guys should do that too. Just like get in there.
We're planning on doing too.
I can barely read, so I don't think writing books is going to be.
There's lots of amazing. You could get software to just like write for you now. You know how it works. Not AI though. I mean the transcription stuff. You know, just dictate like you're like a Victorian gentleman.
Yeah, that's the only way I could do it.
Yeah, you should definitely write something about your squirrel hawking.
Yeah, I could try. Yeah, it might be fun. Yeah. It's a pretty taboo subject.
Yeah, it'd be a good book for my daughter.
Yeah, do it. Yeah, when she reaches like, so maybe she's like 7 or 8, maybe. Rather than
No, I'm just thinking Casey's writing and her reading level would be perfect.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of colorful pictures in there. Just the way I like it. You know, a lot of descriptions with pictures. No, that's fun. That's
this
awesome.
has been really fun. Thank you so much.
Like,
seriously.
Helen. Yeah, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And it's been a joy. And we have got actually bloody months and months until the season begins again. But I hope you have a great season. And I hope to bump into you both at some point when I'm in the States. It'll be lovely.
Yeah.
You just shout. We'll take you.
You're very welcome here. Just let me know. Yeah.
We'll take you hawking.
Definitely.